Welcome back to Impact Show. So last time I was in front of a camera was in Deer Valley, Utah with a lot of people that are in this room. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're not only interviewing someone really, really special, but behind the camera are about 15 CEOs and founders of incredible businesses and professional services companies. So everyone that's in this room represents impact, and that's why we created this show. And you know, we've covered a lot of topics from defense to journalistic integrity to emerging technology. But one of the greatest things that we all as humans deal with is healthcare. And with the advancements in healthcare and artificial intelligence technology, I couldn't think of anyone greater than Justin Lee to interview around this topic. Justin, I know a lot about you, and congratulations on the baby that's coming, and I got to meet your family and all. But why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your background, where you grew up, how you got into what you're doing, and just kind of fill us in on what the story of Justin Lee is.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Sinon, and thanks everyone for coming. So a little bit of background about myself. I was born in Chandler, Arizona. I lived there until I was 10. We actually moved to Newport Beach for one of my father's jobs. He started Jazz Semiconductors, which spun out of Rockwell. It was a Carlyle leveraged buyout. So I spent 8 years in Laguna Beach before I went to college, went to undergrad at University of Colorado at Boulder, ended up working for a Fortune 2 oil and gas company in futures trading. So I was a hedge trader as well as a market analyst for jet fuel as well as ultra-low sulfur diesel. Didn't like Houston so much, so went over to San Francisco to do fintech, and actually joined a company called FactSet, who just joined the S&P 500 this year. Worked there for several years, opened up their Los Angeles office, and then joined Helio as one of the first employees and co-founders. And it's been 6 years, and it's been an exciting ride.
Wow, so you bounced around not just regionally, but across different industries as well. So tell us a little bit about Helio, how it was founded, what the business does, and what you guys are planning to do.
At its core, it's a bioinformatics company. So we look at artificial intelligence, we use machine learning, and we look at thousands of data points in your DNA and in your blood and proteomics data, and put that all together to be able to tell if you have cancer and drive deep insights from your biological data. What we're currently exploring is other business avenues. For instance, we just opened up a service called EasyDoc, which is actually primary care at home, where we can actually send a nurse to your house to take your vitals. We can telemedicine in a physician. We believe that everybody should get access to good healthcare at affordable prices. And we think that the biggest logistical barrier to people getting healthcare is people don't want to go to hospitals. It's like a 4-month wait time for a primary care visit today, and it's also, you have to wait in a waiting room for many hours, and it's just very challenging. So Helio's doing a number of different things in addition to just the base cancer detection technology. So
talk a little bit about cancer detection, cancer being one of the leading contributors to early death, and I'm sure everyone in this world has known somebody, if not already, that's affected by cancer. Now, why has it taken so long to get to this point of a cure? There is no cure, but there seem to be a lot of strategies around a cure that will prolong life or will lead to some sort of better outcome. Can you talk a little bit about just cancer in itself and why, with everything that's going on with modern technology and all the resources available around the world, why there still is no cure?
Yeah, so cancer is a very complex disease. I mean, people like to think about cancer as one disease, but really there's 50 different types of cancers, and they all look very different, and they all have different drugs and different treatments, different standard of care workflows. It can get very, very complicated. So we're of the belief that a lot of money has been spent on late-stage drugs and treatments where it's historically been very profitable to treat patients and to get insurance coverage, whereas there hasn't been enough money in R&D spent on early-stage diagnostics to try to find cancer earlier when it can be treated more effectively and have where people can get better survival rates.
Right, and so early detection is what it's all about.
Early detection is the key.
So looking at early detection and then treatment and therapeutics and what's available, tell us a little bit about Helio's solution in that. So you guys are using complex data sets and predictive analytics to find in your AI some sort of mathematical calculation that tells me that I either have cancer or I'm going to have cancer. Is that what you guys are doing?
That's exactly what we're doing. So there's 3 billion base pairs of DNA in your genome, any given person's genome. There's 28 million methylation markers. There's hundreds of thousands of proteins. These are all rich data points, right? And when we think about artificial intelligence and how it's permeated every single industry, it's been really slow to take effect or to disrupt healthcare. Mm-hmm. This, I think, is one of the key areas that artificial intelligence can completely change the way that we think about healthcare and treat diseases. So if you look at 10,000 people with cancer and 10,000 people without cancer, you sequence their genomes, you get all this data, you can train a model to spot the pattern differences between people who have cancer and those that don't.
Right. So looking at the sequencing and just being able to predict if you have this, how does the lab play into this? Is this something to where it's a blood test and then it goes in some sort of vial to a lab and it's detected in your AI there? Or is this something being done at home? Can you talk to us a little bit about the application?
Yeah, so we would love to get to a full home diagnostic one day, but technology is not there yet. It still requires high throughput deep sequencing. These are terabytes of data. They're measured in bases in what we do, so bases of DNA. So right now, blood is taken at a physician's office or at home. It has to be done by a skilled professional, so a nurse or a physician's assistant or a medical assistant. Mm-hmm. And then that blood is overnighted back to our laboratory in West Lafayette, Indiana, or Fulgent's laboratory in Temple City. Fulgent's our commercialization partner. We will run through a 4-day automated process to sequence that blood, and then we'll apply the algorithm that we previously trained to be able to tell if you have cancer. So all of the artificial intelligence and machine learning was done in the discovery and training phase and the R&D phase of developing that test. And now that we're providing it commercially, it's just a simple algorithm that's locked down that doesn't change.
And how is that different than what currently happens at a doctor's office, or you get a physical or you're not feeling well? How is it being detected now, and how is Helio advancing that solution?
Yeah, so it depends on what type of cancer. For liver cancer, which is the first one that we've developed a test for, the standard of care is ultrasound. So ultrasound is used every 6 months to screen high-risk patients. These high-risk patients have liver cirrhosis, or they have hepatitis or hemochromatosis, some kind of risk factor. And when ultrasound is positive, it detects, it basically leads to a suspicious signal that patients then send on to an MRI or a CT scan, and then subsequently diagnosed and then treated. So our test will replace ultrasound. You can get a simple blood test. Right now, only a fifth of people who should be getting ultrasound for liver cancer are actually getting it. Right. So people are highly non-adherent because it's difficult to get an ultrasound. You have to go to a different facility to get the imaging, and it's not very accurate, right? So there's not a very good consumer image of it. Right. So with the blood test, not only is it more accurate, but it's also simpler to use. It can be taken at any physician office. It can be done at your primary. It could be done at your hepatologist. Sure. You don't need technician staff. You don't need ultrasound radiologists, and it's much more accurate. So.
Wow. So liver cancer is like where you started. And it seems to me that this is just a way to bypass the ultrasound and all these difficult steps to actual detection. You guys are streamlining that, and it just seems like there's a direct correlation to alcohol use to liver cancer. That's an obvious. It seems like there's more alcohol out in the world than ever. It seems like you guys are poised for a big growth to your business. I mean, there are correlations that are pretty obvious. Tell me a little bit about how healthcare, which seems to be a very highly regulated industry, deals with a newcomer like you. Do you have like the HIPAA world that you have to deal with, or are there new regulations because you are dealing with AI versus like an ultrasound scanning?
I would say it's challenging because in America there's a lot of different stakeholders, a lot of different agents that are involved in regulations and things like that. You got the insurance companies, the payers, you have the physicians who actually prescribe the tests, and then you have the patients, and then you have a whole host of patient advocacy groups and other types of agents. So it does take a very long time to get a disruptive technology to the mass market in healthcare. You have to go through FDA approvals, you have to get CMS reimbursement, you got to get it into the guidelines. But in general, I would say the community has been very receptive to the test. Right. There's no doubt that we need a test like this, and that blood tests in general are gaining a lot of traction in the place of standard of care. So we will get there eventually. Sometimes I feel it's a double-edged sword because you need to have regulation to make sure products that shouldn't be in the market don't get to market, but sometimes it also makes it a little bit more difficult to get the right products to the market that should be in the market.
And then who are you going to sell this to? Is it the doctors, the physicians, and the medical practices? Is that your primary customer base?
So we have 3 customers: the physician, the patient, and the payer. The primary customer, I would say, is the physician. So if we can get all the physicians on board, the physicians will prescribe it to the patients. The patients are typically going to listen to their doctor. But we have to provide a good experience for everybody who's involved in order to get mass adoption.
And so going past the liver cancer detection, tell us the broad scope and the future of Helio in the next couple years.
We've already got a colon test. We have a gastrointestinal test called Helio Protect. And the next one that we're doing is a lung cancer test. And we've made significant leaps in progress in R&D for our lung test. We eventually want to be a completely comprehensive liver solution. So not only early cancer detection, but surveillance and treatment monitoring. We also want to do minimum residual disease, precision oncology. But we also want to go across to other types of cancers that are very prevalent. Prostate cancer is a big one that's an issue in the US.
And so the detection, I mean, it sounds like you guys just fast forward the process. In 4 days, you have the result from the lab. Can that result be facilitated in an app on your phone, or is it something that still needs to go through the physician?
So that's definitely in our development plan. We want results in an app. We want you to be able to look at your results longitudinally. This is not a one-time test. People should be getting screened every 6 months, right? Remember, these are very high-risk people who are sick and who have a high incidence or high probability of developing liver cancer. So we absolutely want an app. We want an ecosystem that's providing advice to the patient, to the physician, that's reminding people to be more adherent to their standard of care schedule to get them back in the clinic every 6 months.
So one of our good friends is Richard Reisman with the Orange County Business Journal. You were just named Innovator of the Year with the hundreds, if not thousands, of businesses in Orange County that hope for that award. What do you think really took it over the edge for Helio, and what was that moment like?
Well, first of all, we're very honored for receiving that award, but I think it's our disruptive model and thinking about the patient experience and the customer journey. We're not just trying to develop a better and more accurate test, we're also trying to make it much easier for the patient. There's 2 things that can lead to better health outcomes in cancer detection. Number 1 is just a more accurate test, and number 2 is getting the patient to actually show up. So we put a lot of value and emphasis on making the test as simple as possible so that, first of all, you can buy it in one click, right? We try to emulate the Amazon model, and we also try to make the logistics as easy as possible. We don't want people to have to think about anything. We just want it to be part of the normal workup.
So to all of our viewers, we have thousands of entrepreneurs that watch this show. Think about customer journey, think about member journey. What is it like in your business, and what is it like in the journey process of your customer? So whether it's cancer detection or marketing services, whatever that may be, customer journey and that experience truly differentiates, and it helps companies like Helio break through and become the next greatest unicorn. So tell us a little bit about the business itself, because we all run our own businesses. We're either founders or we're partners or we're CEOs of companies. Tell us about how you were able to get funding, who are some of your partners, how you went from concept to this incredible enterprise.
Yeah, so we started as a UC San Diego technology spinout. So we got connected with Dr. Kanjan, who was a well-known physician scientist, geneticist at UC San Diego, and we were able to partner with him and acquire his technology, and we still have an exclusive license and co-ownership with UC San Diego. Later, we raised friends and family rounds, we raised a seed round, we were able to get a Series A, We partnered with a lot of corporations that wanted to see the success of the technology and be involved in something that was bigger than themselves, right? There's a big ROI element to this and also a big impact element. Who doesn't want to support cancer, cancer screening and better health? Later, we were able to raise money from, I can disclose Samsung Securities as well as Fulgent Genetics. We were able to close a $35 million round with them in July of last year. And Fulgent was the lead investor with a $20 million check, and now they're our distribution partner as well.
Okay, great. So like as far as the business is concerned, are you still in what you would consider startup phase? Are you now commercializing, creating revenue? What does the business look like in the next 3 to 5 years in your perspective?
So we have a soft launch. We've launched our test with Fulgent Genetics. We've sold a pretty good number of units for getting customer feedback. We're really focused on getting the logistics right, getting the results delivery right, and to provide a better experience for our 3 types of customers before we do a full launch, which would be when we get the actual FDA approval. Mm-hmm. We just finished our FDA study. It was a 1,600 patient study, 3.5-year study, cost tens of millions of dollars. We just completed that August 19th of this year, and we'll be submitting to the FDA in the first half of next year and looking for approval a year after that. So that's really going to take us into the full launch of the product. That's when we would expect to get into standard of care guidelines, get reimbursement, and for the test to become more prolific. And that's the same platform that we're going to use to launch new technology development and R&D for other cancer types and other parts of the cancer continuum.
And so looking at the business itself, what would you say is like the important goals for you in the next year, like as you're building this company? Like what's important to you?
Yeah, I think I think for sure we're the leading solution in liver. There's no other liver cancer company that is really a competitor to us right now in terms of next generation disruptive technologies. So we would like to expand on that and become the full comprehensive solution for liver. We also want to be more disruptive and more creative in delivery of healthcare. I mentioned EasyDoc before. We really want to, we can do so much more than just cancer testing, and all of these different types of businesses that we get into and services that we provide can be synergistic with each other. For instance, if we're working on primary care and health delivery, that can be a distribution network for our test, right, as well as other cancer screening tests. Ultimately, our mission and goal as a company is to save patient lives, provide a better service at an affordable price, and to save lives from cancer.
And that's important to note too. We all are running our businesses so hard, but you have your mission in your heart, comes right out very easily. It's important that all you entrepreneurs have a mission statement. It's not just something written on your website, it's something that comes from your heart. It's got to be something you're really, truly passionate about in order to make that right type of impact. As we round up this interview, I want to think a little bit about data again. So without computers, data really didn't exist. Computers came, data started happening, and then there was like this big movement around big data. And then a lot of these enterprises got into big data, and it's like, what do we do with this data? And that's when machine learning and AI seem to kind of come into the fray. Now there just seems to be so much data that do you see like a horizon point for machine learning and AI and then something new to come from all this? Like that's almost a third version of big data. Like what are your thoughts around just with all this data and all this computing and all this mobilization, all the nodes that we're carrying, all that computation? Is there a limit to this?
I think we've only reached a very small percentage of our potential. Because we have a lot of data, but it needs to be the right data. And the industry at large needs to develop to a point where we can actually access that data in a structured way and be able to make sense of it and to produce tests and drugs and things that can help patients. So medical records is one of the biggest issues in the space right now. There's lots of corporations as well as startups trying to solve that issue. Portability of medical records, continuity of care. Right. Those are things that have not been solved and make our job a lot more difficult as a technology company. Sure. So it costs much more money for our trials, and it takes much longer to enroll primary subjects because we can't access retrospective data, and so on. So there's lots of different challenges for the industry to solve before we can get to our potential in machine learning.
And on our show, we've covered machine learning, machine vision, AI across various industry sectors, from digital license plates to Palmer Lucky's Anduril. It seems like every industry has its own bag of problems, okay? Anyone who has lost a parent or a grandparent or something and gone through America's healthcare system all has the same story. It's a nightmare. I have a friend whose husband just suffered an injury, and I'm following it on Caring Bridge, and it's like just the discussion of long-term care, insurance, legal, the will, and it just seems like such a like clog. We're the United States of America. We're efficient. We're tech. Why is it when it comes to healthcare, there's just so many like barriers of that customer journey you're talking about? Why is it so difficult to have that journey and a more seamless process to whatever you're going through?
I mean, that's $1 million question. I honestly don't know how to solve that. But I will say that I think one of the major issues is that there's so many different organizations that are involved in healthcare, and they all have different goals, right? There's no alignment between all these different parties, and that makes it 10 times harder to do anything and to get any kind of pickup and adoption that you want. So I hope we can achieve it one day, but I still think we're pretty far off from that.
And going back to how the interview started about Justin Lee, I've gotten to know you as a friend. You're an incredible entrepreneur. Talk to us a little bit about the struggles you went through and how, as an entrepreneur, you were able to overcome those struggles. Because I think what's an interesting factor in all of us, or people that I genuinely have on this show, is that they're successful and they got a great business. But I think where we are more tied to the content is about the struggles and the difficulty that they've been through. Are there any that you'd like to share with our audience about how you claw your way through a situation and what kept you going?
There were so many struggles, right? 6 years of bringing a startup from a piece of paper to where it is today. We faced certain death multiple times, right? Running out of money and going bankrupt. Being able to raise the capital, create the credibility, and to show scientific progress and to justify your valuation round after round. We've always been able to pull through, but sometimes we would be a few months away from running out of cash, right? So I think the most important lesson for us was just not to give up. I mean, it sounds cheesy, but you don't realize that 3 months is actually a lot of time. A month is a lot of time. A few days is a lot of time, right? You wait another day and you create new opportunities, and there will always be new moves that open themselves up to you. So that was certainly a big challenge to overcome. Also, I think as a business person and being in finance, joining a pure life sciences and technology and biotech AI company was difficult at first, right? I had to, kind of justify what I was bringing to the table. At first, I started in the finance department, then I went into BD, then operations. Eventually, the board nominated and voted me in as CEO. So, as a business person, there's a lot that you can bring to the table in a biotech company. Life sciences companies, for sure, healthcare companies for sure. There's lots of problems in healthcare companies for business people to solve. Biotech companies, a little bit less, but there's still a lot of ways that you can reinvent the way that we do things, and things that'll be a little bit more obvious to a business person compared to a scientist or a physician.
Oh yeah, well that's great advice, and I totally agree with you. I think when you're backed in a corner, the best thing to do is just sleep on it, wait. Time does change things, and that's how the world works. And your closing bit of advice, we have a lot of young entrepreneurs I get written to all the time, people that will sometimes watch an interview and then be inspired to actually leave their job and start a company. Any advice you have to the next generation entrepreneur that you just come to mind in closing?
I would definitely take risks if you're able to take risks, because I worked in corporate for several years, and now that I've been a part of an entrepreneurial company or a startup, there's no way I ever want to go back, right? Because there's just this ownership of the end result, this autonomy over how to run the business that you're not able to get when you're working for a company, that I really love. And if you're thinking about starting a company, I think you have to really figure out if you want that, along with all the challenges that can come from running a company. And then don't think, just do it. Just take a risk and try, because you'll never find out if you'll never start the journey unless you jump.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, risk is part of the DNA of any entrepreneur. My dad would always say, like, take a risk. If you fail at it and you learn from it, you've actually gained. If you actually take a risk and you succeed at it, then you've gained. So you're going to win either way. And I always like to say, take responsible risks. So take risks with measure. So you know what you're getting yourself into, so you don't, hurt yourself in the end. So with that, I present to you Justin Lee. This just goes into the fabric of these shows that have been created. No agenda, no script, no teleprompter, just conversation. And I appreciate you for adding to it. In fact, our last one was with Palmer Luckey. I took it right in front of his brand new submarine, but I didn't talk to him about his submarine. I talked to him about what his thoughts were on Metaverse, and it was actually very interesting because he was talking right to the camera, but really to Mark Zuckerberg about what he thought of Metaverse. So you'll have to watch my show. And we talked about the war going on in Ukraine and Russia, and what nuclear options would look like, and how the world would react to that. And we also talked about him and what he faced. He was on a podcast, and the person who interviewed him on the podcast had actually said some horrible things about him several years earlier. So unbeknownst to the podcast interviewer, he flipped the script and recited all the things that he said. So there was some really good nuggets that we pulled out of there. And then an upcoming show we're going to have is with David Fernandez, who owns one of the largest body armor companies with the U.S. Army. And one of his great friends, Richard, built the human jetpack. And so we're going to actually demo the human jetpack. We're very excited about that. I've actually been invited to actually demo it. I have passed on it, but I will do the interview on the ground. And then we have Jim Doty, who is an iconic leader. He's a former president of Chapman University that we'll be interviewing in December. So I'm looking forward to those shows. And so I present to you Justin Lee, a modern version of the word entrepreneur. We wish you continued success with Helio. You're in a $1 trillion economy here in Orange County, known for medical device, biotech, and all things healthcare. So we're all behind you, and we wish you continued success.
Thanks so much,
Okay,
Tom.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
We'll be back to you.